song, it's always the dwarves that you're.
Well, I was morphing three things together.
Oh, I think that's pretty.
Hi ho.
It's called a mashup these days, Al.
I'll call it a mashup, is it?
Oh, I thought you said morphine.
I think it's more of a mixtape.
I like what you're wearing. That's just so interesting. That's the right word
Yeah.
to use.
It was an impulse buy. I think I have no other opportunity to wear it. So.
Ah, yeah, that will show up well. I don't really remember talking. I got 2 Hawaiian prints going, so.
It's the first time
Well,
I've gotten up and gone to church in a year and a half.
Hal, you just holler whenever you're ready to start noodling, okay?
Okay, now, when I do the prelude, you'll be announcing that the prayer of hoops, you're the announcer.
Yeah, I'll ring the bell
I think
twice
I'm
and
gonna
then
go
bring
up
the
during
Yes.
Time for All Ages. Is that what we pre-recorded? And then we can just sit up there while they.
So I'll ring the bell once, do all my spiel, and then ring the bell
What did you
twice.
do
Okay.
last week? Which side?
Right up until
Okay, same thing. It's slightly easier this time because you see. That's my real difference. Also, house left and row polished, the 2 mics for performance. Same thing.
Wait, I'm about to concentrate for a minute.
Oh, yeah, let's
just about ready to start.
Okay, I'll do that in front of you.
Are you gonna start, well, are you gonna do some gathering first?
Yeah, that got him.
Are you ready to do it now?
Good morning. My name is Alex Saxon, and I am the worship associate today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whether you have been with the church a decade or more, or this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. Whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of our church activities. If you'd like more information about our church or Unitarian Universalism in general, please contact our minister, Jane Thixton. You can find her contact information on our website. Please be sure to join us after the service for a Zoom coffee hour. The Zoom link will be posted in the comments on the YouTube chat at the end of the service. We'll be breaking into small groups for better conversation. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. It is good to be together, even virtually. And on the subject of being together virtually, the in-person gathering task force met recently to discuss the start of the coming church year. Unfortunately, given the high and very high levels of transmission in Allegheny County, recent UUA guidance on the subject, and considering our cautious approach throughout the pandemic, the task force recommended, and the board has decided, that we will continue remote services through the month of September. The task force will revisit this topic later in September and make further recommendations at that time. So please stay tuned, and thank you for your patience. Stein. 100 times every day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depends on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received and am still receiving. The words of our chalice lighting come from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Harrisonburg, Virginia. To face the world's darkness, a chalice of light. To face the world's coldness, a chalice of warmth. To face the world's terrors, a chalice of courage. To face the world's turmoil, a chalice of peace. May its glow fill our spirits, our hearts, and our lives. Our opening hymn today is number 128 in the gray hymnal, For All That Is Our Life. And I apologize for some technical difficulties, as the words will not be on your screen. So sing along if you can.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
It's UUCNH News, where we invite the young and the young at heart to learn the exciting true story of newsies in 1890s New York who organized and fought for their right to a fair wage against the powerful publishers of the day. A tale of bravery and perseverance with ramifications spanning generations. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Kid Blink Beats the World. Written and illustrated by Don Brown. Published by Roaring Brook Press and used with permission. It was all for a penny. They left their cramped and crowded tenement apartments for a penny. They scurried beside the pushcart peddlers for a penny. They dodged street trolleys and horse-drawn wagons for a penny. And in the summer of 1899, Kid Blank, Racetrack Higgins, Tiny Tim, Crutch Morris, and Crazy Arborn battled the world for a penny. The boys were newsies. They and thousands of youngsters like them peddled The World and The Journal newspapers on the streets of New York City for a penny a paper. They bought stacks of papers, 5 cents for every 10 copies, and then hawked them to passers-by. The trick was to sell them all and not to be left with unsold papers. Extra, extra, read all about it. Ship sinks, bridge collapses, building burns, they yelled, trying to capture the curiosity of anyone listening. Sometimes they invented their own headlines when the real thing was dull. At the end of the day, and scores of sold copies later, a newsie might have made 25 cents, a generous wage in a time when a family survived on $10 a week, and 15 cents fetched a dinner of soup, stew, and pie. But then, 2 of the most popular papers, The World and The Journal, demanded that the newsies pay more for their stacks, 6 cents for 10 papers. Their powerful owners, Mr. Pulitzer and Mr. Hearst, reckoned by doing so they could wring more money from their business and for themselves. And in the end, making more money was the object of their labors. But the penny difference angered the newsies, for they understood that an extra penny for the newspapers was a penny lost to them. It was only a penny, but the young boys and girls wouldn't have it. So they decided to strike and stop all sales of The World and The Journal until the price was rolled back. 300 newsies rallied on July 20th near the newspaper's offices in Lower Manhattan and tried to halt delivery of the papers. But the police scattered the youngsters, took a few to jail, and the papers got out. Still, kind-hearted onlookers showed their support and rained coins on the youngsters from overlooking windows. The bosses of The World ignored the demands of the youthful news peddlers. "We have the situation well in hand," they said. But uptown, hundreds of newsies heard of the strike. They decorated lampposts with banners that read, "Please don't buy The World and The Journal. Our cause is just, and we will fight for our rights." When the newspaper delivery wagons arrived, newsies surrounded them and, with hoots and howls, drove off the delivery men and trampled the newspapers. That night, Kid Blink told a mob of newsies, "The time has come when we must either make a stand or be downridden by the disciples of avarice and greediness. Is you all still with us in the cause?" "Sure, sure," the crowd cheered. They stopped newspaper deliveries, pummeled delivery men with rotten fruit, and swiped papers from the few kids and newsstands that still sold the papers. The strike pressed on. Newsies skirmished with thugs and toughs, hired by the newspaper bosses to sell papers and frighten the strikers. They raided news wagons, and the papers were left in tatters. One downtown street was left awash in 6 inches of torn papers. Permit or not, they paraded up the avenues in the hundreds. The police arrived, and they escaped down alleys or disappeared among the street peddlers. Still, Frank Desso, Cornelius Boyle, and Isaac Miller went to jail. But the strike pinched newspaper sales, and the bosses moaned that their losses were colossal and appalling. Newsies in Rochester, Troy, and Yonkers, New York, Newark, Trenton, and Paterson, New Jersey, Providence, Rhode Island, New Haven, Connecticut, Fall River, Massachusetts, Cincinnati, Ohio, Lexington, Kentucky, joined the strike. Messenger boys and shoeshine boys joined the strike in sympathy. In less than 2 weeks, nearly all the newsies in New York City and adjacent towns had quit selling papers. Where once the papers were printing 350,000 copies a day, now they printed only 125,000. The newsies had won. But the unlikely strike had an unlikely ending. The World and the Journal didn't lower their prices. Instead, they offered to buy back all copies of the newspaper the Newsies were unable to sell. It was neither victory nor defeat, but something in between. A compromise. Clustered on the pushcart-crowded streets, beside the trolleys and horse-drawn wagons, and in the shadow of the cramped tenements, the Newsies tallied the gains and losses of the compromise offered. When their calculations pointed to more money in their pockets, they decided to accept the deal. For in the end, the Newsies were no different than Mr. Pulitzer and Mr. Hearst. More money was the object of their labors too, and the Newsies knew that more pennies in their pockets meant more pennies for their families and a better life for them all. And wasn't that what it was all for?
Good morning. I'm Lynn Richards from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It is a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Chris Hill, also from Lay Pastoral Care, will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation, supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. From Tony Palermo, we have 2 sorrows and a joy. Last week, we lost my beloved Aunt Fran at the age of 90. Her other half, Uncle Al, left us last February. They had been married for 70 years, and she just wasn't comfortable going on without him. We will miss visiting her in New York, going down the street for ice cream, playing games, and reminiscing. Also, my wonderful Aunt Grace left us last week. She, too, helped raise me in my early years in New York. Along with Aunt Fran, she made sure I was fully aware of how much fun dinosaurs could be. To Tony and his family, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. Tony's joy is that their family proudly celebrated the 50th birthday of their son, Dave, at a special party in North Park. In addition to extended family, many of Dave's childhood friends also attended the celebration. To Tony and all the party celebrants, we say, we share in your joy. Next, a sorrow from Mike and Connie Hester. This past week, Connie has been in the hospital twice, undergoing tests and treatment for a painful but not life-threatening condition diagnosed as mucositis, making it very hard to eat, talk, and drink. Connie says, our healthcare system is stretched. Amazingly, all the staff remain very kind and compassionate, but they are very short-staffed, having to work extra shifts. I had a bed, but was moved from here to there as they adjusted to accommodate needs. Be grateful for our healthcare providers. Connie is now back home, but may need some time to recuperate and gain back some weight before attending any of her church meetings. To Mike and Connie, we say, we're holding you in our hearts. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that exist in our hearts, but which remain unspoken today. We especially think of everyone suffering directly or indirectly from this COVID-19 pandemic. Please say with me our caring words, understanding that here includes all those watching. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
Today's reading is from In the Holy Quiet of the Night by Richard S. Gilbert. The Courage of Patience. When we are overwhelmed with the world and cannot see our way clear, when life seems like a struggle between tedium and apathy, or frenzy and exhaustion, when today seems a punishment and tomorrow a torment, may we find the courage of patience. May we recognize courage in ourselves and in our companions that is not dramatic, that elicits no fanfare, that commands little notice by the world, that is forgotten and taken for granted. May we learn how to cope like those who live one day of pain at a time, who see the long path of suffering and do not despair, who inspire us by their patient courage. When we are impatient and afraid, may we know such courage and quietly celebrate its presence among us. We know that our financial contributions to this congregation come from sacrifice and hard work. We are so grateful for this and commit together to ensure the funds we gather collectively do a greater good for ourselves and the world than they could have done alone. The September Share the Plate recipient is Crisis Center North. Crisis Center North is a nonprofit counseling and resource center that provides services to victims of domestic violence and their loved ones in northern and western Allegheny County. They provide counseling, therapy, case management, legal and medical advocacy, and economic empowerment services. In addition, the center provides community trainings on topics related to intimate partner violence and teen dating violence, as well as prevention education programming to local schools. To learn more, you can check out their website at www.crisiscenternorth.org. To donate, please mail a check to the church office made payable to UUCNH by September 30th with Share the Plate or Crisis Center North in the memo line. Or go to the church website's donation page and select special offerings. Please be sure to include the words Share the Plate and or Crisis Center North when making your donation. May we give today in love and in hope. Please join me in saying the dedication of our offering. May these gifts in the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith. Some of you
just wrapped up the morning shift, was on my way to take my finals. When my pendant starts to glow, that's how I know the mission's vital.
sharing a stage, but let me rest assured that today is mostly serious. I have the opportunity and honor to...
So yay, but now I'm flunking grad school and I still can't pay my bills. That's when suddenly it hits me and I call my team to say, I don't think that the real villains are the ones we fought today. Yeah, the city's always calling us to keep its people safe, but if they want us on the payroll, don't you think they ought to pay? Magical girls ought to start a union. Can't do this shit for free. And I don't want to be paid in exposure. That's nothing new to me. Magical girls, we must band together in friendship and in love, and in solidarity forever, to say we've had enough. 'Cause Glitterella has a baby now and Petals can't pay rent, and it's hard to keep a day job down when every moment spent just waiting to be called. The villains could attack at any time, trying to come up with excuses that aren't obvious lies. And I know you've never cared about child labor laws, but this is why we all mysteriously vanish as adults. Please don't pay us by the hour, pay us for our expertise and pay for dental, cause the villains all want to kick in our teeth. Magical girls, come and join the union. Let's show them what it means to realize that it's time to have a transformation scene. And honestly, what would they do if we all decide to strike? I don't know a single hero who dare cross that picket line. When magical girls hit their limits, we're just bombs fit to ignite. So it's in everyone's best interest to negotiate outright. Magical girls, come and join the union. Can't save the world for free. We don't want to be paid in exposure. On that, we're all agreed. Magical girls, we must band together in friendship and in love, and in solidarity forever, to say we've had enough. Oh, magical girls, come and join the union. Can't save the world for free. Magical girls, come and stand together in solidarity.
See, I told you everyone was nervous. They cut my mic. That's how nervous they were. You all know Bruce to be a true Renaissance man. He sings like Phil Collins. He shares thespian skills with Michael Keaton, tells a joke like your favorite uncle, handles church tech like Bill Gates, and collects white dad sneakers like Imelda Marcos. What you might not know about Bruce is that when his heart and mind are dedicated to something, his passion and reliability are paramount. God have mercy on the person that tries to stand in his way. This is exactly how Bruce feels about unions. All worthy causes should have a Bruce, and the union movement is lucky to have him.
Good morning. My name is Bruce E. Travers, and I'm a proud member of Service Employees International Union, Local 668. I work for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the Department of Human Services. From 2007 through 2018, I was the chief shop steward for my union. I was responsible for filing grievances, for meeting regularly with management, and running regular meetings with my coworkers. I also regularly attended meetings after work hours, and this took a lot of time. So why did I do all this? Well, I hadn't belonged to a union before joining SEIU. I had read about unions forming, way back in the 1700s and 1800s. Back then, factory workers, they faced terrible conditions. They were overworked, they were underpaid, they faced dangerous conditions. If a worker lost a hand in a machine, well, he would just be fired and replaced by a heartless owner. No problem for the factory, big problem for the disabled worker. But of course now, we live in much more enlightened times, don't we? I mean, owners wouldn't treat people that way, would they? Unions had served their purpose, but they were things of the past. Well, the more I got involved, the more I realized that's not necessarily the case. Unions are still important. In a union shop, management's treatment of its employees is governed by a contract, such as the one I'm holding here. Every 2 years, my union and the Commonwealth spend 2 months negotiating this contract. This one has 36 chapters, by the way, covering everything from wages, but also treatment of individuals, holidays, discipline, all sorts of things. And one of the rights in here is that it allows workers to choose what location they want to be assigned to. And seniority is used to determine who gets first call. There are actually 7 offices in my unit, and you might want to work at the one closest to where you live. Or there may be people working at a different unit and you'd want a different office, and you'd want to work there. Well, this seniority determining who gets first call led to my first run-in with management as a shop steward. 1 week after I was elected, I had a worker named Oscar who came to me. He'd put in a request to be transferred to an office called IRED. Now, he was a 31-year veteran of the job. Nobody had more seniority than Oscar. Yet, after approving him for the transfer and sending him to an all-day seminar on the special duties in IRED, Oscar was told by management he would be staying where he is, and someone else would be getting the assignment. He came to me. I said to him, Oscar, that is ridiculous. Nobody has more seniority than you. Let me talk to management. I set up a meeting, and I explained to the executive that someone must have made a mistake, and please transfer Oscar to IRED. That executive looked at me and said, file your grievance. I was taken aback. I said, I could do that, but I'm going to win. It's really clear in this contract, it's got to be Oscar's. He nodded, and he said to me, file your grievance. End of meeting. Well, I filed that grievance the next day. Now, grievances by contract can take up to 3 weeks just to get an answer back from management. This took 1 day. Oscar came to me the next day and said he had been informed by management that, yes, he would actually be going to IRED after all. Hey, I was 1-0 versus management. Now, I am convinced, still am to this day, that this was a test. Management was testing me, the new shop steward. I suspected that someone had a friend in exec, suspected, not proven, had a friend in exec and went to him and said, you know, I'd like that IRED assignment. Why don't you give that to me? And they said, well, we'd have to break the rules to do it, but hey, you know what? They got a new guy in the shop steward position. Let's see if we can get away with it. Well, my performance let them know that they couldn't. That was my first and most important lesson about why unions are needed. Management had negotiated this contract. They had signed it. They had agreed to abide by its rules. And they were still going to try to do whatever they wanted to do and make me fight to uphold it, even in the most blatant of situations. This is how I could expect management to behave, even with a contract. Now imagine there's no contract, no union, no rules. My wife is a high-placed executive with a local company. She's well paid. She gets perks like company parties that I, as a civil service employee, do not get. In case you want to know, we pay for our own Christmas party because otherwise it would require a vote by the state Senate, and voters aren't really going to like having their taxes raised so I can have some Christmas cookies. But there is no union where she works. So again, it's not affecting her pay and her perks, but there's no union. And as such, my wife must live in constant fear for her job from the one thing that affects everyone, every worker in the world, growing older. As I stated, in a union shop, seniority is everything. You get first choice on where you work, on your work schedule, and most importantly, you're protected when layoffs occur. Last one in, first one out. Growing older is a source of protection in a union shop. In almost all businesses, the older employees make more money. They've been around and got the raises over the years. But that means they're earning more for doing the same job. And when management wants to save money by eliminating someone, they're going to choose the older worker. Now, that's a bigger savings for the company. So what if an older displaced worker is going to have a harder time finding a new job? So what if they have a lot more expenses by this time, usually, like kids and a home? My wife happens to be invaluable and great at her job, by the way. I've heard her bosses tell me that, and now, since we both work at home, I've seen it in action. Now, that excellence partially comes, well, a lot of it comes from her brains and her way with people, but experience does play a part of it. they're benefiting from how long she's been there. But upper management rarely sees that. If two people are doing the same job, management figures they're the same. Get rid of the one who costs the company more money. Growing older is a threat to employment in non-union businesses. Now, of course, there are a couple of areas where management does see the difference in workers: gender and race. In 2019, women earned 82 cents for every dollar a man earned. In 2019, an African-American male earned 56 cents for every dollar a white male earned. And when I speak to new workers about joining the contract, I bring up these statistics, and then I show them the back of the contract. You can't see it. You can probably see it's a lot of little writing here. This is a chart. And these charts show what they earn now and what they're going to be earning in the years. They have to flip through to find what job they do, how long they've been working here. They go across to what their step is, and they look, and there's how much they're going to make. But interesting enough on that chart, there is nowhere where they put in their gender or their race. Those are not factors. Those pay gaps that I just mentioned are not the result of union negotiations. They are absolutely the result of biases by management in non-union businesses where they can do whatever they want. Those biases affect the lives of millions of workers across this country because there's nobody to push back for them if you don't have a union. Legislators, they can try their best, but that's a very slow process, and invariably there are exceptions and loopholes in every law that gets passed that companies will exploit. A union contract is the quickest, most effective method for ensuring fair treatment and equality in the workplace. Hey, that's our sixth principle, isn't it? Peace, liberty, and justice for all. Now let me tell you another story about how unions level the playing field. My wife and I both started our job with pension plans. A pension plan is often misunderstood as some kind of bonus you get at the end, when in fact, it is deferred compensation for the work you're doing right now. It is agreed to at the time your employment starts as part of your compensation. Now, a few years ago, my wife's company decided they needed to cut costs, so they decided to stop contributing to the pension plan. For the unwary, this seems like a good deal because it saves jobs, it doesn't cut current salaries, but that is a misconception. It is a cut in salary. As I just pointed out, you're losing money that was promised to you for the same job you're doing. But even the people losing it will often have they will not have that perception. And this decision was solely by management. No input from the workers that it affects. But about the same time, the Commonwealth also decided they needed to cut some costs. So they decided also, maybe we could stop contributing to the pension. The first thing they had to do was talk to the union, the people it was going to affect. We met with management, and in the end, we granted them that permission to stop contributing to the pension fund temporarily. We got a guarantee as to when they would start contributing again, what this cost savings was for. That was kind of important. No idea at my wife's company what that money was for, who it went to. We knew what it was going for, and we knew they had a plan in place to replace that lost money when it was over. In this instance, the union was not giving us the power to fight for a raise. It was giving us the power to keep what we had. And that's a great example of where the union did not interfere with management's desires, with their plan. The Commonwealth did stop contributing to our pension and averted a crisis, but we got guarantees back. And those who oppose unions will often accuse them of working to bankrupt the businesses employing the very members that make up the union. That's ridiculous. Unions are very well aware of the relationship between employer and employee. We know both need the other, and nothing is gained by destroying the other side. That's what makes me proud of my union. Not in this water. It's where I see the necessity. In any business, you have the owner and the workers. Now, the owner puts up the risk in starting the business. They rightfully deserve a large share of the profits. But the credit for the success of any business belongs equally to the workers. Yet the power of the owner dwarfs that of any individual in his employ. Individuals must be allowed to bargain collectively to look out for their rights individually. And any demands of the union are voted on first by the members. We vote for what we want to be in the contract, what we want them to fight for. We even rank them as to fight hardest for this and not so much for that. And we vote at the end to accept or reject the contract after the negotiations. That's the fifth principle, respect for the democratic process. The union is the people in it. They don't dictate to us, we dictate to them. Very famous Pittsburgher, Andrew Carnegie. He was well known as a friend to workers. He founded the Carnegie Library System for his workers. And regarding unions, he wrote, "The right of the working man to combine and to form trades unions is no less sacred than the right of the manufacturer to enter into associations and conferences with his fellows, and it must be sooner or later conceded." He even went so far as to say, "My experience is that trade unions, upon the whole, are beneficial both to labor and capital." Yet Carnegie purchased the Homestead Steelworks in 1883 and worked to push out the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers, trying to make a union shop into a non-union shop. In 1892, he traveled to Scotland on a vacation, leaving Henry Frick to deal with the renewal of the labor contract for the Homestead Works. Frick famously took a hard line on negotiations that resulted in a lockout and an exchange of gunfire that left 4 workers dead. Frick sent a telegram to Carnegie to tell him the results of the union busting, to which Carnegie replied, "Life worth living again." He did not respect the democratic process. He respected the autocratic process. He wanted to give the workers what he felt they needed and deserved instead of dealing with them directly. Is this a 19th century attitude? Well, a couple years ago, I think it was around 2012, Papa John's owner John Schneider was bragging about how he built his business himself from nothing. He sold his car to buy the equipment to start a pizza business in the back room of his father's bar. He sold enough pizzas to move into his own restaurant next door. Hey, he deserves credit for that. That's gutsy. I wouldn't have the guts to do that. But before a second store in his chain could be opened, Mr. Schneider needed workers. He couldn't bake all the pizzas and deliver them all by himself. I can believe that he did all the work alone back in the beginning when he was still, but without workers, he would still be operating a tiny business out of the back of his father's bar. To reach the point where he can own a $7 million home required the hard work of dedicated workers. It is the only way. Now, I like to think that relates to our seventh principle, the interconnected web of existence. Mr. Schneider has an estimated worth of $600 million, and it is not a tragedy that his workers do not. As I said, he's the owner. He took the risk. He deserves the lion's share. Unions are here to make sure that the workers get their fair share too. Remember when you were a child and you disagreed with your parents? Maybe you thought, "I'd like a later bedtime." So you'd argue with your parents, and you'd bring up the bedtimes of your classmates, and you'd make all these valid points, and they would listen to you. But in the end, your parents would just impose their will, and your bedtime probably stayed the same. Because you were bargaining and negotiating, but the playing field was not level. The power structure was not even. You had no power, no say. Your adversaries were your parents, and you were the kid. And that's exactly the dynamics that corporations want. They spent centuries with all the power. If you want to work here, you accept our terms. Otherwise, we're just going to replace you with somebody else. You need us more than we need you. In this case, individuals were working against each other and allowing the unfair conditions to remain. Only when the workers banded together to tell the corporations, "No, you won't just replace your workers with someone else because all of us someone else's want the same thing." That's when the corporations were forced into fair negotiations. Collective bargaining is the only way that corporations will pay attention, and that is what's under attack. The most important legislation in labor history, I hear about this all the time, is the Wagner Act of 1935. Because of this act, my union is empowered to be the exclusive negotiating body for state workers. And that is important to understand. All workers are covered under this contract, all state workers, whether they're in the union or not. Non-members are covered. And that's probably news to many of you. But a worker is not required to join the union to be protected by it. There's a trade-off that the union makes to be the exclusive union. SEIU is recognized as the sole union for state employees, and in return, they guarantee to protect all the employees, regardless of union membership. I pay union dues out of my paycheck, about 1.3%, but non-union members used to pay a lesser amount called a fair share, which is about 0.9%. The salaries negotiated by this contract apply to non-union members as well. And by the way, that contract guarantees periodic raises that total about 7.5% over the course of the 2 years. So 1.3% to get 7.25, I thought that was a pretty good deal. Also, non-union members, besides the pay, they also have the right to have the union file grievances for them, and they have the right to union representation at disciplinary hearings. As a shop steward, I, on many occasions, filed grievances and represented non-union members. All the benefits I enjoy as a member, with the exception of voting, are enjoyed by non-members. This is the second principle, I guess: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Remember that fair share? Remember how I said that they used to pay that? In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled in the matter of Janus versus AFSCME, which is a union of state, county, and municipal employees, very similar to mine. In that matter, they ruled that unions no longer have the right to charge the fair share. This overturned a 1977 Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court had already looked at this in Abood versus the Detroit Board of Education and stated that fair share was legal. With the Janus ruling, non-union members would still retain all the rights and protections they previously had, and now they would get it for free. Janus, by the way, was a man named Mark Janus, who felt that the fair share violated his First Amendment rights because he was being forced to contribute money to an organization, his union, that had views that he disagreed with. His legal fees were paid by the National Right to Work Legal Defense Fund. Right to work is a marvelous euphemism for union busting. Remember what I told you: union membership is not a requirement of employment, so the existence of a union was not preventing anyone from working. Does the union use dues to contribute to political campaigns? No, that's actually illegal under the McCain-Feingold Act of 2003. Unions set up separate funds to which members may voluntarily contribute, such as mine. It's an organization called COPE. As a public employee, I am even required to take a leave of absence if I want to campaign on my own time for a candidate. So particularly my union, unions in general, try to steer clear of forcing members of using dues, I should say, to contribute to political campaigns. They have their own separate funds for that, which are voluntary. Now, in 2018, the Supreme Court was controlled by conservatives, and in a 5-4 vote, the fair share was eliminated. The hopes of the union busters is clear: make non-union members get the benefits for free, then encourage more and more people to short-sightedly drop out of the union, and when the union goes bankrupt, those free benefits will become no benefits. You see, they'll tell you that the marketplace should determine wages, but think about it. When the marketplace determines something, it's done collectively. If you don't like how much your local store is charging for a peach, you can complain and you can refuse to buy it, and nothing's going to happen. If a large group of people don't like what the store charges for a peach, they can complain, they can refuse to buy them, and the store's going to lower the price on peaches. The marketplace respects collective action, not individual action. Now, for the record, in 2018, workers in the 23 non-right-to-work states, such as Pennsylvania, thank you, and the District of Columbia, out-earned workers in the 27 right-to-work states by an average of 9.6%. In fact, nationwide, union workers out-earn non-union workers by an average of 15.2%. And unions fight for more than just wages. I'm talking money here, but safety in the workplace is key. There's a whole separate health and safety committee with my union where their sole concern is looking at the workplace and seeing areas where people's safety is in jeopardy. We had an infestation of bugs. I think it was bed bugs. Everybody was getting hit back then. And there was bed bugs in the office. And management was informed by the workers and worked with us, fortunately, to eliminate that problem. Insurance. 86% of union jobs have insurance through their employer, compared to only 67% for non-union jobs. There's the job security I talked about earlier. There's equal treatment of workers regardless of gender, race, national origin, sexual orientation. And there's the chance to complain and file a grievance if you believe that you are being discriminated against. Those are things the marketplace has no interest in, but human beings do. Unions fought for and secured things as fundamental as the 8-hour workday, weekends. You like the weekend? You like Labor Day weekend? Thank your local union. Business owners, they see no such need for things. They never gave those to their workers without it. They were working them 12, 15 hours. Child labor? Hey, Some jobs kids do better. Even now, we hear stories of product manufacturers, including several car companies recently, that knew of product defects but chose not to fix them or institute a recall because they determined the cost of settling the lawsuits for injuries and deaths was cheaper than the cost of fixing the problem. That's the marketplace determining things. They consider only the monetary bottom line. They don't consider the first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of people. But unions do. And that is why we need them. And that is why each Labor Day and throughout the year, I celebrate them. Our closing hymn is number 318, We Would Be One. I chose this hymn particularly for the lyrics in the second verse. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. As one, we pledge ourselves to greater service. That sums up what unions are all about. Having workers pledge to unite so that everyone succeeds together in building a better world.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which bends our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service with love and justice strive to make us free.
Our closing words are from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence.